Welcome to the sample-based Thunderdome, where two devices enter and then they both leave because I don't want to break my stuff. What's going on right now isn't really a death match so much as a debt match. See what I did there? Because music making gear can be really expensive. If you're getting into making beats with hardware instead of with software, you might not be wanting to shell out MPC Live kind of money, $1,200 and up. Some of these things get super duper expensive. So I'd understand why people might be out there looking for something cheap and stumbling upon the two devices we're going to talk about today. We're going to compare them. We're going to see where one excels, where one decels, and hopefully you'll be able to come to a conclusion about which one might be right for you. Of course, don't just watch this video and then go out and order something. Look up a lot of different opinions, not just mine. And the two devices that we're going to talk about today are the Teenage Engineering PO-33 and the Korg Volca Sample 2. And I want to get right out in front of something that you might be wondering about this video. I'm not just going to say one is objectively better than the other. They both have strengths, they both have weaknesses, and I think that depending on what you're looking for, one may be more right for you than the other. So let's talk about it. So the PO-33 can record samples either through the line-in that plugs in over here, or through its built-in microphone. Of course, my favorite example for showing this is to hit record. I choose the number I want to record, and I'll just say, like and subscribe. And I recorded that into a melodic channel so I can play it back chromatically, if I so choose.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe.
On the Volca sample, it's a little bit more involved. So on this Volca sample 2 specifically, you've got a little USB port up here next to my little birdie, and you can connect it to your computer to transfer samples. The transferring is done using Korg's Volca Sample Librarian, which, as a side note, I haven't been able to get to work on Mac. So if you're running Mac OS Big Sur, this might not be the best device for you. If that changes, I'll pin a comment in this direction. But for now, like I said, haven't been able to get it to work. And even though it does work on Windows 10, getting the drivers and everything installed, I thought was actually a little bit of a pain. And I had a lot of trouble with it, though, maybe I'm just technologically inept. But once I had that done, the Volca Sample Librarian is actually really easy to use. You just drag and drop the samples, hit the little transfer button, and pew, boink, right onto the Volca sample. In doing that, I found that it's easier to move a sample library from my computer onto the Volca than it is to move it onto the Pocket Operator because I have to manually sample everything in. Whereas on the Volca, I can just transfer it. So if you want to work out of an existing sample library, it's easier to do it with the Volca Sample 2 than with the Pocket Operator PO-33. So once you've got your samples on there, there's different ways that you can manipulate them. On the Pocket Operator, you're able to slice them, either have them sliced automatically or have the Pocket Operator slice them into 16 even pieces, which gives you fun stuff that you can play around with for making beats. On the Volca sample, slicing is a little bit more of a process. You select a sample, and then you're able to use the start point and the length to change where you would like a sample to start, where you would like a sample to end. So it's doable, definitely slower. But now that we've gotten to the part where the samples are on the devices, why don't we talk about what the workflow is like? So both the PO-33 and the Volca Sample 2 are able to store up to 16 patterns, each of which can be 16 steps long. On the Pocket Operator, you access them by holding this little grid button, which is the pattern button, and then choosing the pattern that you want to go to. And on the Volca sample, you press memory, and then you can load one of those patterns. Per pattern on the Volca sample, you can have up to 10 different samples loaded, whereas on the Pocket Operator, you can use any of the samples that you have saved on there at any time in any pattern. Now, I realize that does make it sound like the Pocket Operator is more flexible. In my experience, there hasn't really been much of a difference. I haven't done a lot of beat making where I've needed more than 10 samples on hand. And if you're an experienced producer and I said that and you just got so angry that you threw something out the window, I'm really sorry about the repair costs. But that's just been true in how I work. On the Volca Sample 2, there's a couple different ways that you can put your patterns together. You can record it in live. To the best of my knowledge, there's no metronome. So I usually use the step sequencer. So if I hit this button here that says step mode, boom, we're in step mode. It even says step, just so you know. So if I hit these pads, you can see that at step 1, which is the first one I hit, then here's step 5, step 9, step 13. It's adding the sample that's on that first slot, which is a kick drum. And I can set the tempo here. If I wanted to load another sample, this one is also the same kick drum. I can turn the sample knob and scroll through my samples until I find something I want. Maybe I want that. So like we did before, I'll hit step mode, and I'm going to add them on those steps. And you can hear we've already got a fun little groove going. On the pocket operator, things are actually a lot similar. So if I hit this button here, this is the right button, it'll allow me to add samples in wherever I want. So now it's added me saying like and subscribe at a very low pitch. That sounded awful. The way that it chooses which sample you're adding is that it's whichever one was played last. So if I play
Like and subscribe.
that, now that's going to be on each of those steps. Oh wow, it still sounds so bad. So on both of them, the actual beat making process is pretty similar. Where things start to get a little bit different is in actually chaining those patterns together. So on the Volca sample, the way that you can chain patterns is if I hold the memory button, I can have it go sequentially through the patterns. So it can go pattern 1 to pattern 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and then when it gets to the end, it just loops. On the pocket operator, on the other hand, you're able to chain the patterns together in any order that you want, up to, I believe, 128 patterns. So I could have like pattern 16 play 3 times, and then pattern 2 play 5 times, pattern 1 play once. And the way you do that is you just hold down the pattern button and tap the patterns you want in the order you want them to play as many times as you want them to play. So if I wanted pattern 1 to play 3 times at the start, I would hit it like 3 times in a row. When you've actually got a beat playing on the Volca sample, unfortunately, you're not able to mute and unmute channels when it's doing the pattern chained mode. But on a single pattern, if I've got it playing and I want to mute something, I can hit mute, and let's see, I'll take out the kick drum. And then I'll bring it back in. Maybe I'll bring out the hats. Or if I wanted, I can use these analog isolators. Can make it sound like it's on an old radio, or like you're underwater. That, I would say, is what the song creation process on the Volca Sample 2 is like. There's definitely a little bit more emphasis put on playing with your samples and patterns in that way, but focusing on just a single pattern. Whereas on the pocket operator, it feels like the focus is more on the larger song experience. Again, whether one is more worthwhile to you than the other depends on how you make music and your personal needs. If I start playing the pocket operator, you're going to hear the beat start. Now, I can't do individual per track or per sample effects. There are filters that you can add, but what I can do instead is if I hit this effects button, I can start adding effects as it plays. Like that. I'll be honest, I actually don't always remember what every single effect is. I just start playing around, mashing them, and seeing what sounds good. That's music. In either case, I think the effects on the pocket operator are more suited towards performance of a larger beat. You know, if you've got several different patterns chained together, whereas on the Volca Sample 2, it feels like it's more focused on the performance and creation of a singular pattern. And again, and I know you're probably getting tired of hearing me say this, I'm not trying to say that one is better than the other. It really comes down to how you create. For me personally, if I'm making a shorter beat that could fit inside one pattern, I find myself gravitating towards the Volca Sample. I enjoy being able to play around with the analog isolators, and I just find that the process of making a single pattern on it feels a lot more intuitive and fast, at least to me. But on the pocket operator, if I'm wanting to make a longer beat, this is what I'm going for. I find that the ability to chain together patterns is a lot more versatile. There's another main difference, which is that on the Volca Sample, you can have all the samples playing at once, if you want to. Whereas on the pocket operator, it is limited to 4 sample polyphony. So if you wanted to have hats, snare, and a kick drum all in the same beat, you're only going to be able to use one melodic sample, or if you use a melodic sample, it's going to take away one of the drums. It gives priority, as far as I know, to the melodic channels. So just something to keep in mind. Build quality. I think that the Volca Samples build, though it's all plastic, Generally feels pretty good. I mean, the knobs are a little bit small. I don't really know how to communicate the amount of resistance that a knob has over YouTube, but it's the right amount. The only real complaint I've got is these analog isolator knobs. I don't know if you can see, but they've got like a lot of play in them, and it does feel a little bit cheap. But aside from that, everything feels solid. Now, when it comes to the pocket operator, I personally think that it's mostly built well. You can see I've got it in this case. They ship as a bare PCB. The only real issue that I've had is with these two encoder knobs. I found that over time, I don't know what part in them has worn down or broken apart, but this leftmost one has been registering inputs when I haven't made any, or has been missing inputs that I've been making. And because those two knobs are used to control a ton of different functions within the pocket operator, including filters, sample length and sample slicing, volume, filter resonance, different effects like that, it is a little bit worrying that I'm noticing that they're starting to quit on me. As far as battery life goes, on the Volca sample, you're looking at about 10 hours, according to Korg. As for the pocket operator, according to Teenage Engineering, you could have this powered on and playing music for a month without it going out. Now, I've never written a month-long song or a month-long beat, but it is reassuring to know that if I ever do, that device can handle it. Other fun things to mention. The Volca sample has a reverb, which you can add to different samples. So if I've got this snare, I could add reverb. You can hear now it's ringing out. It's not the most amazing reverb, but I think it gets the job done. Both the pocket operator and the Volca sample are able to output a sync signal. With the pocket operator, it goes out through the headphone jack. With the Volca, it goes out through the little sync out port, and they're also able to accept sync signals. So the off chance that you've got other Volcas like the modular or the kick, or you've got other pocket operators like the Pocket Operator Arcade, which I love and I'm going to love forever, you can connect them up, sync them up, have them play together. That being said, the Volca is the only one of these two that's able to receive clock from a MIDI signal. Might be something to keep in mind, especially if you want to hook it up to other gear. In gear as inexpensive as the PO-33 or the Volca Sample 2, there's going to be sacrifices to hit that low price point. But I think that either one of them, depending on your needs, could be a great choice for a budding producer. If I could summarize the differences between them, to me, the PO-33 feels a lot more immediate. You know, you can just sample right away, get right into making a beat with whatever you've sampled. On the Volca Sample 2, things feel, initially at least, a little bit more slow. You have to load the samples on. It is, especially compared to the PO-33, where loading samples is pretty effortless, it's kind of clumsy on the Volca Sample 2. But once you've got the samples loaded on and you're really in the zone with it, the Volca Sample 2 does, to me, feel like a more involved instrument. But ultimately, there isn't one single device that's perfect for everyone. At the end of the day, this gear is really just a tool to help us make music, and it's always important that we choose the right tool for our job. If you've got one or both of these devices, let me know in the comments what you think. If there's one that you use more, if there's one that you, let's not say regret buying, but maybe you wish you'd bought something else. Anyway, I want to thank you so much for watching and listening. To all returning viewers, thanks for coming back. And if you're new around here, please consider hitting subscribe to help support the channel and to be notified of when I upload new videos. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like, leaving a comment to let me know, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye.
Wing, 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 wing.